Hello. Yeah, good evening, friends. Today I am going to discuss you related the how we can configure the network address translations and why we require the network address translations. Okay. So before going to starting these sessions, you can uh, follow me on facebook.com/cloudnetindia. It is a official channel of our companies. At the same time, if you wish to connect directly with me, then you can also follow me at the facebook.com/dkroylives. So let me start the friends. What is the network address translations and how it work? So there are some informations related to network address translations. So let me first discuss what is the network address translations. The network address translations is the process where typically a network device, it may be your firewalls or router, mapping one IP address to another IP address for the purpose of reducing the number of public IP address requirement, and it is also help to hide the actual IP address. That can also help to improve the securities. Typically when our device connect to public internet, then they required a public IP address. Without a public IP address, our device will not able to communicate the device which is situated on the public internet. Now if we are using the network address translations, it can help us to reduce the number of public IP address requirement, because we can map so many public IP addresses, and vice versa. You can think, suppose if we have 20 computer in our inside local area network, then that can be mapped with only one public IP address, and all system will be able to access the public internet. Like when we try to communicate with the host on the public network, a net device assign a public IP address to a computer, or it may be group of computer inside a private network. The main use of net is limit the number of public IP address requirement, and it is also help to hide the actual IP address. The first thing is that what is the private network and what is the public network. If we think about the private network, then where the all resource which is owned by a companies, like may a company having their own office where maybe 200 or 300 computers, and that all computer are connected together through using the common medium. It may be wire based or wireless, and company also having the own router and switches. So those type of network are referred as a private network. To communicating device inside the private network, typically there doesn't require a registered IP address or public IP address. So there are some range of address which is actually reserved for the private purpose, that can be used inside the private network, and there will be no problem. The device easily can communicate with each other. Like private range from the class A, here one entire network are reserved for the private communications, that is 10.0.0.0. You can think the entire range of 10 network, like 10.0.0 to 10.255, 255, 255. In class B, 16 network are reserved for the private purpose, from 172.16.0.0 to 172.31.255.255. And in class C, there are total 256 number network are reserved for the purpose of private network. Okay, the range is starting from 192.168.0.0 to 192.168.255.255. So these all are private network which is reserved for the private communications purpose. Means if you have the own resource, means your network which is owned by your company or maybe yourself, then you can use these range of IP address, and you doesn't require any registered or public IP address. The thing is that like the private address scheme work well for the computer that only have the access resource inside the network, like maybe your workstations needed to access the file server and printer inside the local network, then there are no problem. Router inside the private network can route the traffic between the private network address with no troubles. However, to access the resource outside the network like the internet, these computers have to have a public IP address in order to respond their request to return to them. This is where the net come into the play. Means if you want to communicate the device which is situated only inside your private network, you doesn't require any kinds of solutions from the net. But if you have private network where you have configured the range of private IP address and you wish to connect your device to the public internet, then net device are required. They will play to mapping your address from private to public before leaving the your traffic from your network to public internet. So hopefully we have already understanding level what is the private network and what is the public network. The public network is typically like the public internet, where the network can be leased but it cannot be owned by someone. So those type of network are referred as a public network. If you wish to connect the public internet, then you have to take a lease or maybe rent from the internet service provider, and they typically provide a registered IP address to you. Maybe sometime ISP are also provide the private IP to you, because they are also having the own net router where they enabling the sessions like private to public communication systems through the net. So net is only required if we wish to communicate from private network to public network. Now I have one illustrations. Here you can see this side is my private network portions. The having IP address is 192.168.0.12. This is typically from the class C address, and this is connected through the switch to my router, and my router having the IP address is 192.168.0.1. that is my gateway address, and another interface of router which is connected to the public internet. Here 203.31.220.134 is the IP address, which is public IP address, because this not the belong to the my private range. So if some device which is available in this public internet and net are enabled in your router, typically net can be enabled in your router or maybe in firewall appliances, then how the net are work? The first time when any packet will forward it to the public internet, then what happen? The destination's IP is like 135.250.24.10. that may be for a web server like www.example.com. So this is the IP address of any public devices which is connected to the public internet, and my source IP address is 192.168.0.12. This is the actual packet where the packet will encapsulate in my this PC. Now when the packet will forwarded to routers, here is net enabled, then what they will do, they will change the my source IP address like 192.168.0.12 to a public IP address. In this case, the my public address is used instead of this private address is 203.31.220.134. So when this packet go to the public internet, they only avoid about the public IP address. They don't know what is the actual IP address of requester. They know the IP address of requester is 203.31.2220.134. Now when the packet will replied from the public internet to my router, then my router is again change the IP address from 203.31.220.134 to respective private address, that is 192.168.0.2. So how basically NetAR work? When any request will send from your computer that is inside your private network, they have a private address as a source and destination's address is typically a public address. When the packet will go to your router, then router change your private address to another public address, that is the mapping from one address to another address, and send to the destinations computer. So destinations computer are only aware about the mapping address, that is the public address. They don't know what is your actual private address. Now I'll going to show the another net example, so it will be, let me describe, like it will be much more helpful to you. In this case, this computer is my host. This is my private network, where my host having the IP address is 10.1.2.27, and this is the actually security appliances. Here are enable the net. As I told you, the net can be enabled in router as well as in security appliances, that is typically in firewalls. And this is the outside of network, like www.cisco.com. So what happen when the packet will send to this gateway or security appliances, they are converting this private address like 10.1.2.27 to a public address, and when it again back, means when web server is responding and packet will reach to these security appliances where net are enabled, then again they are changing through the public address to the private address. So this is the another example, and now I am going to show the final example. Here you can see this is my inside LAN. One computer having IP 10.1.1.2, another is having 10.1.1, and first time this computer sending a request to the a public host that is situated to in public internet. So that maybe they are planning to access the web pages. So what will be protocol type? The web services typically using the TCP protocols. So inside address is 10.1.1 for PC1 and 10.1.2 for PC2. So the IP address which is used inside the my local area network, that is in term use the inside local address. Now when the packet will go to the router, here is net are enabled. They are going to map 10.1.1 to 203.0.113.2 for this computer, and 203.0.13.2.17.23 for this computer. So private address inside the LAN, that is called inside local. The public address which is used to mapping in my net enabled router, that is referred as a inside global. Now my destinations address is 198.51.100.4, that is the outside global address, and here no any net enable, so outside local address is also same. Maybe possible on outside network they also have a net, then outside local address can be also possible to a private address. In this case the outside network is also a public IP address in both outside global as well as outside local. So friend, I hope you will able to understand how the net here work. Now there are three type of net. You can also think like the three versions of net which is typically used in enterprise network. One is called static net, where a single computer having a private IP address, like you can see in 192.168.0.1, and if we are using the static net, then these required a dedicated public IP address to map this private address to public address. So you can simply think, if you have the three computer inside your LAN, then you require the three public IP address to map as a static net, and it is the fixed, means when anytime 192.168.0.1 will request to access the public internet, always it will going to convert by 203.31.221.8.208, as this is the permanent mapping for this. So static net is a mapping method where one address required to map with another address, means one private address required to the another one public IP address, and it is fixed. Now another versions of net that is called dynamic net. Dynamic net is also using one-to-one method, but only one difference is when we are thinking about the static net, that is the fixed mapping. For example, 192.168.0.1 will try to access the public internet, then that is mapping by 203.31.218.213. If you are using static net, then this public IP address is fixed always for IP address of 192.168.0.1. However, if you are using the dynamic net, then mapping method is one required to the another one, but it is not always the fix, as they have the pool of public IP address. Means it may be possible 192.168.0.1 can be mapped 203.31.218.213. On second time, the same address can be mapped with the another public IP address. Means there are no any fixed boundaries. Always a private address will be mapped to the specified public IP address. So it is also one-to-one mapping. Only one difference is there are no fixed which IP will be mapped on public network. And last versions and very popular versions, which is typically we are using inside the LAN, that is called overload. In overload, the all private address will map to a single public IP address. The question is that suppose PC1 having the IP address 192.168.0.1 and it is mapped by 203.31.218.100, and if another computer having the IP address is 192.168.0.2 and if that is also using the same IP address, so when the any packet will replied from the public internet, then how the router can understand the packet for PC1 or it is for PC2 or PC3. For that, they are using the unregistered port number to make the mapping of unique. Like you can think 192.168.0.1 requesting, here is one associate port number is 3000. Okay, so when it will mapping to the public, here mentioning the port number of 3000, but if another computer trying to access the public internet like 192.168.0.2 that may having the IP in another computer, then the same IP will use like 203.31.18.100 to map it, but their port address will be different. In this case, if 0.1 using the port number 3000, then 0.2 IP will use the another port number that may be 3010 or 3002 or 3005. So overall it is a unique. So overload net is also referred as a port address translations, or maybe in short term we are saying the PAT. So PAT is the more popular versions, and as they are using the unregistered port number to mapping on unique way, so you can think like the port range which is starting from 1 to 65,535 and first 1024 port number are registered, so rest of all port can be act as a unregistered port. However, some port are also again it is redefining for the registered, but still you can think like nearby 65,000 port is the unregistered port. So a single public IP address can map nearby 65,000 computer address, and that all can access to the public internet. The question is that is any type of broadband connections are available who can enable more than 100 computer to share the single internet connections. Typically hardly if your internet connections are available like 10 Mbps or 40 Mbps, then maximum they can share the bandwidth with the 100. If you are sharing with the 200 or 300, then your network connections will be too slow. Okay, so there are no limitations like problems of IP addresses. The limitations of bandwidth is problem. So overload net is the more popular versions which is typically used in today local area network to access the public internet. So hope friend you have understand what is the net, what is the private network, what is the public network, how net are work, what is the versions of net, how the static net you are mapping the address, how the dynamic net you are mapping the address, and how the overload net you are working address. Okay, so thank you to watching this video, and we will upload the another video for the another series where you will see the practical impact how we can configure the static net, dynamic net as well as overload net. Okay, so keep watching. Thank you. Wish you all the best.